Get ready to meet Andersen Silva, because his About pages, total friendship material.
Right.
Or at least the start of one fascinating deep dive.
Intrigued already. We're dealing with not one, but two About pages here. One for the man himself, another dedicated entirely to his music. And spoiler alert, they're not your average run-of-the-mill bios.
Not even close. It's less, here's my resume of life, and more like, well, imagine a world traveler's scrapbook exploded and we're piecing it back together.
And what a scrapbook it is. Just the things experienced section alone on that first page. Honestly, I'm not sure it ever really ends.
Right. But let's rewind for a sec for those just tuning into Andersen's wavelength. Born in New Jersey, 1970, to Brazilian parents. So we've got that cross-cultural thing happening right off the bat.
Gotta love a bit of global influence in the mix.
Oh, and huge animal person, by the way. Cats, penguins, even a soft spot for squirrels. Buckle up for this band's performers seen live list. By the way, we're talking not just the big names either. Punk legends too. Ramones, X. Honestly, I had to double check a few of these, not gonna lie. Some serious deep dives just to understand the breadth of this list.
Which, if we're drawing those connections back to the things experience list, it's all starting to add up, isn't it? This isn't someone afraid to explore, to push boundaries.
Exactly.
Eclectic tastes, from the sounds of it. And speaking of eclectic, the sheer variety is mind-boggling.
It's like he's trying to collect life experiences like some people collect stamps.
And it makes you wonder, is it a restless spirit, a constant need for something new? Or maybe something deeper? And then there are those almost moments sprinkled throughout.
Oh, you mean like very briefly in the running for sexiest geek alive?
Exactly. Or how about fleetingly considered jumping into the Housatonic River? I mean, what's the story there?
So many questions. It's like he's giving us a glimpse behind the curtain, but only for a second, just a peek.
And those glimpses, those almost moments, they had a certain intrigue, wouldn't you say? It's like, what makes this guy tick? What's he really all about?
Speaking of what's he all about, his places visited list. It reads like Indiana Jones took a wrong turn and ended up on a Hunter S. Thompson road trip.
Okay, you've got to give me an example.
Just for starters, the Ben & Jerry's flavored graveyard.
Okay, that's specific. I'm seeing a theme here. It's not about checking off the typical tourist traps. It's about finding those hidden gems, those places with a story to tell.
And maybe, just maybe, those experiences, those off-the-beaten-path adventures, they're all connected to the music somehow.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. But before we dive too deep into that rabbit hole, let's talk about Andersen, the musician, because that second About page, oh boy, it's a doozy.
So way back in high school, he kicks things off with a parody band, the Hellevators.
Hellevators, like taking the elevator to rock and roll hell?
Pretty much. But the Hellevators, that was just the beginning. He forms an experimental duo later on, not an Exit, and they dabble in a bit of everything. Industrial rock, a touch of Doors, even a little Chuck Berry thrown in for good measure.
Whoa, talk about genre bending. This is like musical fusion on another level.
Right.
But here's the thing that strikes me. He's pulling from all these different influences, weaving them together.
Creating something totally unique in the process.
Exactly. And let's not forget, we're talking about a guy who plays multiple instruments himself.
He releases his first solo album back in 2004, Join Anew, and follows it up with a double album, I'll Live, in 2016. And since then, he's put out a handful of singles too. She, My All, Spark Rekindled.
Those titles, especially the more recent ones, they hint at something more personal, wouldn't you say? Like we're getting a glimpse beyond the quirky lists and the eclectic influences.
It's like we've made it through this maze of experiences, this whirlwind of music, and now we're about to discover what lies at the heart of it all. The real Andersen, maybe. Kind of feels like we walked straight into a mystery novel, you know? We've got all these clues scattered around, the travels, the jobs, the musical grab bag of influences. But how do we put it all together?
Right. Is there even a complete picture to find? Or is that part of what makes Andersen Silva so fascinating? That we're left guessing a little. Although, can I just say, for someone so clearly passionate about making music, it's kind of wild how little he actually tells us about his own sound.
You're not wrong. I mean, we get those lists of bands he loves, those cryptic descriptions, but it's almost like he's leaving it up to us to connect the dots, you know, figure out what it all adds up to. And maybe that's the point, right? He's not just handing us a prepackaged sound, a neatly defined artist statement. He's inviting us into his world, giving us the raw materials.
And saying, all right, now go listen to the music. Tell me what you hear.
It's a bold move, gotta give him that.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of brilliant, because it makes you listen more closely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the enigma that is Andersen Silva. What's the takeaway for our listeners at home? What have we learned from this wild ride?
Well, I think the biggest lesson here is this. Embrace the unknown. Don't be afraid to explore, to try new things, to challenge your own assumptions.
Ain't that the truth? Sometimes the most interesting stories are the ones we have to piece together ourselves, the ones that leave us wanting more.
Absolutely. So go out there, find those hidden gems, those artists who defy categorization, and who knows, you might just discover your new favorite band, your new favorite song, your new favorite, well, everything.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. But hey, the conversation doesn't have to end here. Go check out Andersen Silva's music, see what you think. And until next time, happy listening.